You know the one thing you need to understand in economics? It's the behavior of the people, and when you look at many of the subprime lending practices in bad debt before the crash of 2008, Patrick Bet-David seems to think there's some scary parallels that we can draw with today. There's some important stats around the idea that I want to show you. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but subscribe to the channel for more discussions like this. Let's dive into it.
What's different between today and 2008 market crash? 2008 market crash was about no income, no assets, NINA loans. Banks were giving them money left and right. Hey, stated income. You're trying to qualify for a $720,000 loan. How much money did you make last year, Tom? Oh, I'm a school teacher, $48,000. You're not going to get qualified for this. Tom, I'm going to ask this question one more time. How much money did you make last year? I just told you, $48,000. Do you want to get qualified for this or not? Yeah. Okay, one more time. How much money did you make last year? 62? That's what it was. No income, no assets in 2008, right? 2007. And then I remember the month when I knew it's over, because the one guy in LA who was making $400,000 a month had an office in Topanga Valley, in Topanga or Canoga, 30,000 square feet of office space. November of 2007, he shuts it down.
Ooh.
And this is right after you're seeing WAMU, Countrywide, all these other companies that are doing what they're doing. Very problematic when that took place.
You know what's really scary? Subprime lending of that kind that Patrick Bet-David is describing here is not just limited to mortgages. Sure, the big bankers and credit unions may have learned their lesson against subprime mortgages, but there was a lot more bad debt in the system before 2008, including auto loans and credit card debt, that you can also trace today. Credit card debt alone account stands at an all-time high of nearly $1.2 trillion. The average American today has a total debt of over $100,000, which eats up a significant chunk of their monthly budget, to the point that a third of Americans cannot even afford a $400 emergency. What does that tell you? The people are standing on a dangerous cliff where one push can send them over the edge. That sounds similar to what happened in 2008, but there's something else I want to show you. What happens when you combine a bunch of bad debt with a rapid rising of the Federal Reserve interest rate? Well, you have those people with that debt squeezed against the wall until they simply can't afford to pay anymore. Let me show you the big picture of the interest rates over the last 20 years and you'll see something peculiar. Watch that steep rise from mid-2004 to mid-2006, and then look at the even more steep rise in interest rates we've seen after lockdowns from the pandemics were opened up in 2022, now standing at a pretty high 5.3%. What happens when interest rates are raised so quickly? Well, borrowing becomes much more expensive, consumer spending lowers drastically, and business revenues decline. But even more importantly, people with bad debt and lenders that have given out subprime credit start to feel the squeeze. The result in 2008 was a crash of the housing market, and what could be next?
So then you saw cities like Riverside County, 65% houses foreclosure.
Oh,
then you had loan modification. Then you have people that were buying 5-6 homes paying the negative amortization payment, which means if you got a loan, this was a program that came here from Australia. It's what the story you always hear about, that this program was in Australia. We brought it in America. It was meant to only be for people who are affluent. Okay. You got a $20 million loan on a house. You got $40 million in a bank account. I'll give you $20 million. No problem. You got 4 payments to make. You got your 15-year loan, which is going to be the biggest loan. You got your 30-year fix, which is going to be reasonable, but it's not a 15-year loan. Then you have your interest only, that you're literally only paying interest, and the loan stays the same amount. Or you got your negative amortization payment, which means the loan gets bigger every month that you pay it because it's negative amortization. Every month, the loan gets bigger. Okay. So for example, for the average person in America, it would have been something like this. It would have been NAGAM payment was $1,200 a month. Interest only was $1,800 a month. 30-year fix was $3,100 a month. And 15-year was $4,500 a month. Okay. So people are like, dude, buy another house and another house and another. So now I got 5 houses that I'm paying $1,200 on. Well, I can afford to do that, except that was only for 2 or 3 or 5 years. Oof. And then all of a sudden, your $1,200 payment goes to $4,200 times 5 houses. How do you pay $20,000 a month? You can't do it. Boom. Foreclosure, foreclosure, foreclosure.
Now, if you're thinking that the levels of subprime lending in America are far lower than they were before the 2008 crisis, you'd be right. But when it comes to inducing a similar recession, I think that Patrick Bet-David said there has a parallel to today. Think about it, an economic recession can happen when a lot of loans default at the same time, but there's another reason that it can happen, which is when interest rates rise too quickly. Remember, inflation was at a 40-year high in 2022 in America as the economy started to come out of 2 years of almost zero interest rates and then a rapid tightening of the monetary policy. So fast could introduce a level of volatility that the economy cannot sustain, least of all people most vulnerable, which is the lower and middle income households that hold most of the bad debt.
The case study of today is somehow, some way the government thought it's a good idea to lower interest rates to 1%. And we had 3% loans that were going on. And then we talk about a 128-month expansion. By the way, if there's no COVID, that would have been a 150-month expansion that we would have had. That's not good to have a 150-month expansion because during that cycle that we went on, Tom, money was so cheap that people were just picking up money and buying stuff left and right. It was so cheap. Go get a house. Go get a car. Rates were low. You know, these big companies are getting $50 million lines, $100 million lines, $200 million lines. Go get as much money as you can. Then COVID hits. When COVID hits, philosophically, it was a shit show.
Isn't that an interesting window into how debt is stress tested in times of crisis? Whether that be the market flooded with subprime debt before interest rates rise, or whether people are encouraged to take on more debt because of low interest rates, you can't guarantee that it's going to be smooth sailing for the duration that you have to pay it back. And in the world that we live in, it seems like many of the assumptions on debt in both personal and national capacity seem shakier than ever. It's now that being more fiscally conservative makes sense over recklessly drowning in debt. We saw in early August just how vulnerable the US stock market is to shocks from across the world, coupled with a decline in consumer spending in the US and an unexpectedly high unemployment rate.
There is no loan application because even new homes are not being sold to do the loans of new homes. So home sales are down because typically when refi comes down, people will sell homes. No one's selling homes today. Why are they not selling homes today? Because they're still sitting on some cash and they don't want to give up that 3% loan they got a year and a half ago. And then you look at the data. Okay, let's just say I do sell this house. I got to go buy another house, but I got to get that house at 8%. I'm not willing to do it. Why would I do it? So I'm not going to. There is no motive to sell the house. So now, what's the ticking time bomb? A few things. One, Jerome Powell is trying to increase rates, hoping unemployment increases, because that's what we need. They need the unemployment to increase. It's not moving. It's still 3.7, 3.5, 3.8, 3.9. It's not moving. It's right there. Okay, so either we need unemployment to go up or we need people to run out of money. If people run out of money and they're stressed out, guess what they do? They're going to sell the house. So today, numbers came out saying it's 55% more cheaper to rent than buy. This is the highest we've had ever.
If there's one thing this entire conversation should reveal, it's that history repeats itself until it is learned. As this graph shows, American household debt has been on a constant rise for the last decade, just like it rose for a decade before the financial crash of 2008. Debt means that we're exposing ourselves to vulnerability, and something like a rapid rise or fall in the interest rates could be enough to knock over enough pieces for the domino to start falling. And that's the scary scenario that Patrick Bet David has been warning us about since at least the last 2 years. Let me know in the comments if you agree, because every small financial decision in people's individual lives is going to count toward making the situation better or worse.